Hello everyone, welcome to Advanced Knowledge Systems and a warm welcome to AKS IAS Academy. It offers examination coaching for UPSC CSC, State Public Service Commission, SSC Combined Graduate Level and CLAT examinations. And about me, I'm Sandeep Bhushan Thumala and I take up the analysis of the Hindu newspaper of today's, that is 19th May 2021. And throughout my session, I would be emphasizing on the keywords and the key phrases from the Hindu newspaper, wherein we will identify the factual, analytical and conceptual questions which would be critical for UPSC prelims perspective. And while you get into the mode of imbibing the keywords and the key phrases in your answer writing for the mains examination, your answers would be precise and concise. Therefore, you will score higher marks in the mains examination. So this session at AKS IAS Academy Daily News Analysis will certainly help you to crack both the prelims and mains of 2021. And before we get into the DNA of the newspaper, we would be focusing at the quote of the day. And the quote of the day says that when you feel like quitting, think about why you have started. So make sure that you always have in your mind the reason why you have started. So certainly whenever there is any kind of inhibition and a feeling towards quitting, why or quitting the entire goal, is that you need to think about why you have started. So certainly you will not have any more feeling of quitting, but rather you will get into the mode of acquiring or accomplishing the task. And now we will get into the DNA of the newspaper, and here it is in regards to the Health Ministry is warning. Health Ministry comes up with a warning, and the Joint Secretary of the Health Ministry, that is Lav Agrawal, on May 18, 2021 has said that 98% of the Indian population are still vulnerable and susceptible to COVID-19 pandemic situation. So as we are looking at the grim situation which India is facing because of the second wave, we see there are number of morbidity and mortality cases. But still, if you look at as per the statement made by the Joint Secretary of the Health Ministry, and as the Health Ministry is warning that 98% of the India's population are still vulnerable and susceptible to COVID-19, and they say that it's only around, they have taken it as 98%, but frankly speaking, our accurate, it is 1.8% of the Indian population had been affected by the COVID-19. That means still 98.2% is the Indian population, still they have not been affected. Hence, they are vulnerable and susceptible to the COVID-19 pandemic or COVID-19 disease. And because of this, majority of the Indian population are still under vulnerable and susceptible to COVID-19. The Health Ministry or the Joint Secretary of the Health Ministry says that we cannot let our guard down. That means there has to be a continued focus on containment, and that is a critical how we need to overcome, or how we can make sure that the 98% has to be reduced, and then it could be only a small amount of India's population percentage which should be vulnerable and susceptible, and that can be only through the continued focus on containment zone or containment in regards to the spread of SARS-CoV-2 virus. That could be in regards to the social distancing, or else in regards to the making sure that wearing masks and then hand sanitizers, that is hygienic practices. So definitely these are the one which we need to take it into consideration, and we need to have the continued focus, and we cannot let our guard down, so that we can make sure that the percentage of the Indian population which are vulnerable and susceptible to COVID-19 can be reduced, because only it is 1.8% of the total population of the country had been affected. So there is a lot which is certainly a grim-like situation which we need to face further if we are not, or if we are letting our guard down. And the Niti Aayog member VK Paul has also spoken about this, and he has said that as already we are looking at the possible vaccine for use for children. So definitely now the Niti Aayog member has focused on the vaccination process, and especially the vaccination process which is for the children or below 18 years, which it has been taken into consideration internationally or various other countries across the globe. And then he is also talking about the Indian children's or below age from 2 to 18, which wherein we can go ahead with the possibility of vaccinating them and carefully tracking any changes in the virus. So definitely there are two instances or 2 points which are being raised or highlighted by the Niti Aayog member VK Paul, that is at the looking possibility of vaccine for the children's and carefully tracking any changes in the virus. And he also added that the national task force which has or which would certainly examine the new drug which has been developed by the DRDO, that is Defense Research and Development Organization, for the treatment of the COVID-19, that is in regards to the drug 2-deoxy-D-glucose. So this is a drug which has been developed by DRDO in collaboration with the Delhi or in regards to the Dr. Reddy laboratory. So that the Niti Aayog member has said that the National Task Force would examine whether the new drug which has been authorized for the emergency use authorization by the Drug Controller General of India can be taken into or can be added to the COVID-19 treatment protocol or COVID-19 treatment guidelines. So certainly the mention in regards to the drug 2-deoxy-D-glucose was also made by the Niti Aayog member, that the COVID-19 National Task Force would take into consideration whether there is a necessity for adding the 2-deoxy-D-glucose drug to the COVID-19 treatment guidelines, which has been received the approval from the Drug Controller General of India for emergency use authorization. And now we will look at the another news, which is the keyword which we need to focus throughout the entire analysis is the electoral bonds or electoral bonds. So there is a concept which has come into the existence in India, that is in regards to the electoral bonds, and this scheme electoral bonds has started in India in the year 2018, and since then there is a method wherein the political parties in India have been receiving the funds through the electoral bonds. And now what we would be looking at the news is that there has been an petition which has been filed by an activist through the RTI and the State Bank of India, which has sold the electoral bonds worth 695.34 crores from April 1st to 10th, wherein at that time it was the assembly elections which were in full swing in Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, West Bengal, Assam and Kerala. And this information has been given by the State Bank of India, which the State Bank of India has sold the electoral bonds worth 695.34 crores from just within 10 days, span of 10 days, that is April 1st to 10, wherein when there was the assembly elections taking place in India. And this SBI has given this reply only because of an right to information reply, and that is by the State Bank of India. It has given that the worth the State Bank of India has sold the electoral bonds is 695.34. So this is a huge amount which has gone into the public to the or by the public or by the individuals or organizations to the political parties during the elections, which have been taken up in 5 states across India in the month of April or May, which it has extended. And it was 695.34 crores which has gone to the various political parties. And according to the numbers which have been provided by the SBI through the RTI reply, it says that this amount of 695.34 crores of sale of electoral bonds worth is the highest ever for any assembly elections since the electoral bond scheme has been started in the year 2018. So that is the reason the humongous amount, that is 695.34 crores of electoral bonds which was sold by SBI, is the highest ever for any assembly elections since this scheme electoral bonds have started in India in the year 2018. And the scheme, when we are talking about the electoral bonds which are started in the year 2018, which is again crucial for prelims perspective, what does this scheme talks about, or how does this scheme really works for the political parties, that they would get the money through the electoral bonds. That is, the scheme allows any Indian citizen or company that they can purchase the bonds which have been sold by the State Bank of India, that the bonds which are being sold by the State Bank of India can be in various denominations such as 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh or 10 lakh, or it could be a denomination of 1 crore. And any citizen or company can purchase the bond by the SBI in various denominations, and then further the citizen or the company which have been brought or purchased the bonds, electoral bonds, further can an Indian citizen or company give them to the political parties anonymously. So this is the one which has been given permission by the government of India now, that the electoral bond scheme can be taken up, and that money which the bonds are purchased by any citizen, that is Indian citizen or company, Indian company, can further give them to the political parties anonymously. But wherein this is again a kind of a scenario wherein political parties are getting the money from various, individuals or company, which can be taken into consideration how far which political party is getting, but it is anonymously. That means even through the right to information, the bank, that is the State Bank of India, which is selling the electoral bonds, do not mention which political party, which denomination is going to which political party. So that is a cause of concern to the Indian democracy also. And the highest amounts were sold by the SBI, that is at the Kolkata branch first, and then followed by New Delhi and then Chennai. And even the Hyderabad and Mumbai branches have also sold 91.5 crores. Gandhinagar branch, which has sold 5 crores, Jaipur, that is 5 crores in Jaipur, and then Gandhinagar branch which has sold 15 crore, and Guwahati with 4.15 crores, and then Panaji, it has sold 3 crores. But if you look at the one which has highest amounts of the electoral bonds which were sold by the SBI in the Kolkata branch is 176.1. So this we can make it very clear that Kolkata, that is the West Bengal elections, how it has been impacted and what is the electoral bonds which have gone to which political party is a big question mark. That is, out of 695 crores, 176 crore has been sold by the SBI at the Kolkata branch, followed by New Delhi, which is 167.5 crores, and Chennai 141.5 crores. So this itself speaks volume about how the money is going to the political parties and how the money is being spent by the political parties in the democratic country, that elections have to be fair. But through the electoral bonds, there is huge amount of money which is getting into the hands of the various political parties, which is kept anonymously. And the SBI, in its reply to the query which has been filed by a Bihar-based right to information activist, that is Kanhaiya Kumar, on April 16 he has filed an query, and on May 14 the SBI has given this information, that is the amount of the electoral bonds which were sold by the SBI of worth. It is only mentioned about worth, that is which branch, how much amount of electoral bonds worth were sold. But the SBI has declined, please do understand, even through the Right to Information Act which was filed by a Bihar-based right to information activist Kanhaiya Kumar on April 16, on April 14, the SBI has declined to name the political parties. That is what the SBI has come up with. saying that it would decline to name the political parties which have got the X amount through the sale of electoral bonds. And it has said that the third party personal information is exempted under the Right to Information Act. So, as the third party information cannot be given out or cannot be named or it cannot be made public, and it says that, that is the SBI says that it is exempted under the Right to Information Act. Therefore, the SBI declined to name the political parties which political party has encashed the bonds in regards to how much money has received to which political party. And the bank also has declined to share the details of how much commission the bank has received. Please do understand here, it is not naming the political parties, and the other one is it is declining to share the details of how much commission the bank has earned from the sale of bonds. Please do understand here, it is advantage to the political parties and it is advantage to the bank by receiving commission, because when when an Indian citizen or Indian company purchases the bond, there has to be a commission which has been paid back to the bank, and this is what is also been declined, that to share the details of how much commission the bank has earned from the sale of bonds, which has started in the year 2018. And it says that the information was commercial confidence. So it is declining to share the how much commission the SBI has earned because of the sale of bonds since 2018, because it says that it is the information was commercial and confidence in nature, and the disclosure of the commercial confidence in nature, that is the commission which the SBI has earned, would, or it discloses, the kind of disclosure would harm the competitive position of the bank. This is the reason which has been given by the banks to declining to share the details of how much commission it has. So it has said that the information is, or it was for commercial confidence, and it will harm the competitive position of the banks. But the Right to Information activist Kanhaiya Kumar has said that as the SBI is the lone bank which is going ahead with the sale of electoral bonds, so where does the harm of competitive position of the bank come into picture, and the commercial confidence in nature comes into picture when it is the only bank which has given permission by the government of the day for the sale of electoral bonds. So this is again very crucial for in regards to the prelims as well as mains perspective for the keyword which we have focused at length in regards to the electoral bonds. And in regards to the another news we would be focusing, that is how the rural India is certainly now experiencing the surge in COVID-19 or COVID-19 diseases. And it has been also mentioned by the Prime Minister of India that yes, there is a concern that the cases are surging in the rural India, and therefore there is definitely a concern not only in regards to the surge of the COVID-19 cases in rural India, but also in regards to the lag in vaccination, that is the slow process of vaccination in the rural India, and the surge of COVID-19 cases is a looming crisis, is a crisis which is surging at a very volcanic eruption kind of one, and this is the one which the health ministry has to focus. And now we will look at how the rural India in regards to the surge in cases and the lag in vaccination when comparing it with the first wave and second wave. We will focus and analyze it. Now we have seen during the second wave of COVID-19, the rural India is definitely showing signs of having the cases which are high definitely. But if you look at overall in India or in the urban cases, it is easing. Please do understand here, the overall this COVID-19 cases since last 5 to 7 days, we have seen that the ease of cases or the positivity rate has been reduced, But the other side of it is the spread of cases in the rural areas is burgeoning, or it is growing or increasing, and that is the cause of concern. Not only, as we discussed, the cases are increasing, and in regards to the vaccination, it is lowering. The cases are increasing and the vaccination is lowering, and this is the cause of concern. And now when we focus with the second wave to the first wave, we have looked at, or we can have a clear analysis of what has happened during the first wave. It was in the month of September 2020, the peak of the COVID-19 cases have peaked during the first wave. That was in the month of September 2020. And the COVID-19 cases started piling up in urban areas initially during the first wave. And then later on, once the cases have been piled up, or it has increased in the urban areas, slowly or gradually it has spread to the rural areas. And then the rural areas, the cases in the first wave have constituted 65%. That means once the cases are increased, or it has started in the urban areas, gradually it has spread to the rural areas, and it has spread, and the number of cases have increased in rural areas compared with the urban areas. And now we will focus very categorically the data of the cases, this surge of COVID-19 cases in the urban, semi-urban versus rural and semi-rural areas. We will take up that how it has impacted. So in the second wave, if you look at the split, that is, it is 52% of cases of the COVID-19 in urban and semi-urban, and it is 48% of cases in the rural and semi-rural areas. This, if you look at, the urban areas are having more number of cases and rural areas are having less number or less percentage of cases. When we consider it in March 2021, in this second wave, please do understand it. This is the analysis point of view. So we are taking this data for a better understanding and analysis how the cases initially have increased in the urban areas and then gradually moved, or it has shifted towards the rural areas, and the overall cases have been to the rural areas. So again, when we move from March to the mid of May of 2021, the case load has split. That is, the case load, when we talk about, it is only 35%. Now we are talking about in the month of mid-May, it is only 35% in rural, urban or semi-urban cases. But if we consider again the same kind of scenario in the mid-May of the cases, it is 65% in rural and semi-rural areas. So this is the one which is a shift of the cases from urban, semi-urban versus rural and semi-rural. So what is very important to you all as a civil servant aspirant is that the pattern of the increase of cases, that is COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 cases from urban, semi-urban towards rural and semi-rural areas, is the one which you need to focus from descriptive or means analytical point of view, that a pattern, that a similar pattern or a pattern which is been followed or identified from the urban, semi-urban areas towards shift towards rural or semi-rural areas. So the keywords what you need to focus is the cases from urban, semi-urban areas towards rural and semi-rural areas. And if you look at 60% of the cases were from rural and semi-rural districts, which if you look at, it is 12 to 50% of the people have received one dose in the rural or semi-rural areas by May 14. So this we are focusing in regards to the number of cases, and we're also looking of the vaccination. percentage of vaccination taken up in urban semi-urban areas versus rural semi-urban or semi-rural areas. It is only 12 to 15 percentage in the rural and semi-rural areas. But in contrast, or if you compare with the urban areas, it is 30 percentage of the, look at it now, 12 to 15 percentage in the rural areas and 30 percentage in the urban areas, and semi-urban areas it is 19 percentage. So if you focus in the semi-urban areas, which is 19 percentage, is greater than the one which is the rural and semi-rural areas, which the individuals have been inoculated by the vaccine, which is only 12 to 15 percentage. So this is the analysis which you need to focus in regards to the surge of cases and the vaccination, or the number of inhabitants been vaccinated or inoculated by the vaccine. And if we look at the fully vaccinated, when we're talking about fully vaccinated, it is both the doses, first and second dose. So if you look at the both first and second dose who have got in rural areas or the rural residents is only 2.6 percentage. And if you look at the urban areas, it is 7.7 percentage as of May 14th. As of May 14th. So this statistics is very crucial for a better understanding about the pattern of the surge of cases and the number of inhabitants being vaccinated when compared with the urban semi-urban versus rural semi-rural areas. So this is the crucial analysis which we have taken up, both comparing it with the rural and urban areas, again semi-rural and semi-urban areas. And now we will look at how does the vaccination drive really helps. Does it help? And the data from various states have shown that daily confirmed cases have decreased among the one who have been vaccinated, and the number of cases continue to rise in the second wave to the one who have been not been vaccinated and the higher age group. So certainly it is a clear message from the data that the one who have been vaccinated, who are among the higher age groups, or the one who are having or who have been infected by the SARS-CoV-2 in the second wave, please do understand. And the experts have also said that vaccines effectively prevent the severe disease. That is, it will not be a life-threatening infection if the individual is been vaccinated. Please do understand. There could be a possibility that even after 2 doses of vaccine being inoculated or administered to an individual, there could be a possibility of the individual being affected or infected by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. But it will not be a severe disease. It will not be a life-threatening. But they would be getting infected, but they would move out of the infection within very short period of time. So that is what saves the lives. That is, the vaccination drive, immunization drive will certainly save the lives of the people. And that is also the worrisome, wherein it is in regards to the rural and semi-rural, wherein it is only 2.6 percentage of the inhabitants in the rural and semi-rural areas who have been inoculated or administered by the vaccine. And it also says that the lower the vaccination numbers in the semi-rural and rural areas suggests that the pandemic will be more severe. And this is being reported anecdotally, that is personal view, which is not by the facts or any kind of reports, which is now taken up anecdotally across or several parts of North India. So definitely vaccination helps. And this could be couple of lines or couple of points, key phrases. You can also use it in your mains for the measures how the vaccination drive or immunization drive in regards to the SARS-CoV-2 or Covishield, Covaxin or Sputnik now, as of now, can help to prevent effectively from severe disease or life-threatening by the Covishield or Covaxin or the vaccine itself. And now we will look at the another news, which is in regards to the Colombo Port City. So this is as per the international relations, we will focus this. And there is a China-backed infrastructure development which is being taken up in one of the port city, that is the Colombo port of Sri Lanka. And this has been taken up, or else the entire port China-backed construction or investments, infrastructure investment in the port city has actually taken up in the year 2019. And this Colombo port city is the one which is being taken up, or the go ahead or the clearance of the land in the Indian Ocean. Please do understand, here the main focus is Indian Ocean, which is very strategically important to focus from Main's perspective, and also a better conceptual understanding about the China's or China-backed investments in the Colombo port city. And this has been started in the year 2019, and there were a lot of hue and cry in regards to it. And this port city construction or infrastructure development is the one which has been pushed by the Mahinda Rajapakse, and this has been challenged in the Sri Lankan port. And when it has been challenged, that is, the Colombo port city has been challenged, or Colombo port city economic commission bill. This is a key phrase. The key phrase is that what we need to focus, that which China has gone ahead with investing in the port construction or infrastructure development of the port of Colombo. The Colombo Port City Economic Commission was challenged, or there were 19 petitions which were challenged in the Sri Lankan top court or Sri Lanka's Supreme Court. But in turn, Sri Lanka's Supreme Court has rejected all the 19 petitions which has challenged the Colombo Port City Economic Commission bill. And in turn, it has rejected, and in turn, it has approved the 1.4 billion Colombo Port City project. And when it has approached, or it has approved the 1.4 billion project which has been approached by the petitions or 19 petitions challenged in the Supreme Court, it has said that it has approved the 1.4 billion project, but it said there has to be a minor amendments. And when it has said there has to be a minor amendments to be done, and it has approved it, and immediately the government has accepted the Sri Lankan's top court decision to go ahead with subject to minor amendments, or the government has to go ahead with minor amendments, and it has immediately accepted. That is, Sri Lankan government has immediately accepted the Sri Lanka's top court, which it has said that it has to go ahead with the minor amendments. And this is a China's funded tax-free enclave, and this is definitely Sri Lankan answer to Dubai and Singapore. And the Sri Lanka's top court, which has approved the 1.4 billion project, certainly has cleared the legal hurdles, and it has given a go ahead for the Sri Lankan government. And this is the largest single foreign investment in Sri Lanka. This is the largest single foreign investment in Sri Lanka by the China, and it is one of the several massive Asian infrastructure projects which have been funded by China. And in turn, when it is the largest single foreign investments, and when it is one of the several massive Asian infrastructure projects funded by China, it is Beijing's trying to increase its regional footprint in Indian Ocean. And that is why I am saying it is strategically very, very important for India also, that whether there would be a possibility of a threat to India in the Indian Ocean towards India, because it is the largest single foreign investments in Sri Lanka by China, and it is one of the several massive Asian infrastructure projects, and China wants to increase its regional footprint. And that is why this analysis I am taking up in regards to how they, I mean, not just focusing in regards to the Sri Lankan top court has approved the 1.4 billion project, that is Colombo project, or it has rejected to challenge the Colombo Port City Economic Commission bill. But the point is the China's increase in its regional footprint in Indian Ocean. And this project has been named as the Colombo Port City because this port has the construct, or the port city is having, or it is close, or it is having a proximity to the Colombo main harbor, and the entire acquiring of the land has been completed in the year 2019, and it has doubled the size of Colombo's financial district by adding 269 hectares. So this is the conceptual understanding about the Colombo Port City. Why it is called? Because it is having a close proximity to the Colombo's main harbor, which the acquiring of the land has been completed in the year 2019 itself, but has doubled the size of the Colombo's financial district. This is the keyword. Colombo's financial district has been doubled by adding 269 hectares. And the bill which we were talking about, that is Colombo Port Economic or Port City Economic Commission bill, which under this bill the legislation is expected to passed, or this bill is expected to be passed by the parliament, and the port city will be administered by a commission, and this commission will have an unprecedented powers. Why? To fast track the investment approvals in the Colombo's port city, because it wanted, Sri Lankan government wanted a kind of, or almost a look-alike of Singapore or Colombo, or Singapore, or in regards to the way that Dubai has in the Sri Lanka or Colombo port city. And the transaction within the port city will be denominated through the foreign currency, and the salaries paid for the project will be tax exempt. So this is the one which is in regards to the, or about the Colombo port city. Colombo port city, you will have a commission which will administer, and it will have an unprecedented powers to fast track the investment, and this entire transaction will be denominated in a foreign currency, and the salaries paid to the workers would be tax exempted, and you have a financial district in the Colombo port city. And the project official says that by approval of the Colombo, or else the Sri Lanka's Supreme Court of approving the 1.4 billion US dollar project in the Colombo port city, will attract billion of dollars for trade, banking and offshore services, which also attract the same billions of dollars for trade, banking and offshores in Dubai and Singapore. So definitely Sri Lankan government is eyeing on the attraction of, or attracting the foreign investors with billions of dollars for trade, banking and offshore services, the way it happens in Dubai and Singapore. So please do understand. So definitely China backed Colombo port city construction would be as similar or as lookalike of Dubai and Singapore, and that is what I have said here. Sri Lanka's answer to Dubai and to Singapore, and this has cleared the final hurdle in the Sri Lankan's top court, that is the Colombo's Port City Economic Commission bill has been approved, which has 1.4 billion project. And now we will focus from pictorial representation. So this is the one which is a Colombo port city. Fine. And this has been acclaimed. This port city has been acclaimed, and it is the construction, or China-backed investment project in the Indian Ocean. This is a concern. Colombo Port City taken up or it is backed by the China's investments in the Indian Ocean, which is having a very close proximity to the mainland India. And this is the one as of now. And once the entire infrastructure development takes place, it will look like this. So it will be as similar to what Sri Lanka's answer is to Dubai and Singapore. So that it wanted, Sri Lankan government wished to attract billions of dollars for trade, banking and offshore services. So look at this image and look at this image. Once the entire infrastructure project is completed, you will have all high-rise buildings in the Colombo Port City. And this, once the entire project is constructed, so it will look like this from this position. From this position, it will look like this. And this Colombo Port City project will consist of 5 different areas. That is International Island, Central Park, Living, Financial District, the Marina, and the Island Living. So this is the project. So if you look at this part is Marina, and then you will have the Financial District, this area, and then the International Island is this area, and the Central Park would be here, and this entire area is the Island Living. So this is how the Colombo Port City is divided into 5, that is International Island, Central Park Living, Financial District, the Marina and Island Living. So this is crucial information both for prelims perspective as well as mains, how the Colombo Port City, which has been now backed by China, is a concern which is in the Indian Ocean. Please do understand, it is in the Indian Ocean, backed by China, funded by China with $1.4 billion project. And now I will come up with a question for you for the mains examination. The new Colombo Port City Economic Commission bill makes Colombo Port City a Chinese province in Sri Lanka. Comment. So this for the mains examination, taking into consideration of international relations, you can consider this as part of the Indian Ocean. We have been talking about Indo-Pacific region. We did talk about Indo-Pacific region, but now there is certainly a concern that how China is extending or wanting to have its way in the region, that is Indian Ocean, by funding the Colombo Port City to Sri Lanka with 1.4 billion, and it is the single largest investments by China in Sri Lanka, and it is a major investment by the Asian Infrastructure Project funded by China and Beijing's ambition to have its way or presence in the Indian Ocean. So based on all these points, now the question is for the mains, the new Colombo Port City Economic Commission bill, which has been passed or which will be passed by the parliament, makes the Colombo Port City a Chinese province in Sri Lanka. You can write the answer. You can try to write the answer. So I hope this session was informative, knowledgeable, and also very critical for mains perspective for UPSC point of view. So I would say a very big thank you to all. Good luck to you all, and then take care of your physical and mental health. Maintain consistency, stick to your schedule, and then do not forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe the AKS IAS Academy English Medium YouTube channel, and also I have access to the website and the Telegram link of AKS IAS Academy. And then see you again tomorrow with the daily news analysis at Advanced Knowledge System. Till then, thank you, goodbye, and then take care.